bylaws, it's really helpful to try to catch up on all of the things that maybe aren't so modern, that maybe haven't been reviewed over time, and just make sure that we're kind of at the leading edge of what governance would say. Um, and I can give you a couple of examples about that. And the line, like the needle that we're trying to thread is we never want, because bylaws don't get changed all that often, and because the process to change bylaws is hard, and I'll speak to that in a minute. We don't ever want to put an organization in the position that like every 5 minutes we're having to change the bylaws because we've done something, or the board wants to do this, or responsibly we should do this, and now we're like, oh, okay, we got to go back and we got to change the bylaws before we can sort of keep up. And so we're trying not to meddle, like we're trying not to create bylaws that have the effect of meddling on the organization, and that are kind of broad enough that they will allow us to grow or allow us to continue to evolve with the organization. And so, jumping ahead, the process to amend bylaws is the members. So, if you were a for profit organization, which you are not, the equivalent of members are shareholders. And whenever an organization wants to change its bylaws, either the shareholders in a for profit situation or the members in a society or in a Part 9 Companies Act have to approve them. And the threshold to approve them is high. It's not just simple majority, it's higher. And so what that means is, and so there's this whole process. You've got to give the bylaws out to all the membership, have the opportunity to ask questions. Then the membership has to vote. First of all, we have to get the right number of members. We got to get enough members who care to show up, which is why we often pair these things with an AGM, because we know they'll be there anyways. We've got to get enough members who care to meet the quorum threshold to even get it on the agenda. Then we've got to get enough members to vote in favor of approving bylaws. All of that is hard on a day-to-day basis. And so again, all of that to say, we're going to do that in November, where that's one of the items on the AGM roster or on the agenda. But since we're doing that, we want to make sure that we're conforming to kind of the latest and greatest, and also giving ourselves the room to evolve and grow as things might change or evolve over time. One of the examples, and this was one of the specific questions that was asked, I can't remember, doesn't matter who it was from, as to why did we pull out the objects out of the bylaws. So the last time the bylaws were filed, we had this section which kind of set out the following objects, and there's six of them. There's a handful of them. Well, the reason why that got pulled out is the legislation changed in the last 3-ish years, and corporate registry will not accept bylaws anymore that have the objects baked right into the document. 100 years ago, when not-for-profit societies and Part 9 companies started, that was the requirement. Now they want two pieces of paper. They want one that only has the objects, so one only the objects, one only the bylaws. So what we did was we lift, because we know it would be rejected if we tried to submit it with the language in the bylaws. We lifted that out. We haven't made any changes. We've put it on its own piece of paper so that when we go to submit the documents to corporate registry, we'll say, hey, please see attached two pieces of paper, one with the objects because that's what they require, and one with the rest of the bylaws. So the effect of it, when we do a comparison saying, hey, these were the bylaws before, these are the bylaws now, it looks like we've just eliminated it. The missing piece of that puzzle is we have eliminated it because corporate registry requires it be eliminated, but it gets its own little spotlight. It gets its own place. And again, that's just one of those things that evolves. Like there is no rational reason why corporate registry rejects it, but they do. And since we live in the world of needing corporate registry to register things, we have to play by their rules. So that's an example of kind of those like modernization, and we have to make sure that we comply with legislation. I predict in 5 years they'll be like, you know what, objects should always belong in bylaws, and you got to dump them back in, and that's just how it goes. And I can't explain why it is, but there's just some of those types of nuances that arise from time to time. Another example that I wanted to, I don't think this was a specific question for this group. I think it was a question last time, but it's worth pointing out when we look at kind of the modernization, I'll call it, of bylaws, and why are we like, what's the lens through which we're looking at some of these proposed changes? one of the things I think that has shifted or has changed over time and might continue to change kind of from time to time is the boundaries. So we used to have all this language in the bylaws that was like, draw a line on the map here and then draw a box here, and this is this region, and that's a different region. And that has shifted over time. And because those things have shifted, and because, conceivably they may still shift in the future, it's awkward if we have to call an AGM, get this high threshold of participation to get quorum, to get the right level of consent to change the bylaws, to do those kind of more operational or I call them like a little bit more mechanical changes. And so what we've suggested in a number of cases, this is a little bit of a theme throughout some of the proposed changes, is anything that can be a policy or anything that can shift or that we anticipate might evolve over time, we would like to reference in the bylaws who has authority to change it. And so is it the current directors who can like redraw the boundaries based on certain things, based on notice? That's going to be a lot easier to maintain the currency of that as these little things start to shift. If regions, consolidate or come together, it's easier to maneuver and keep those records current when we don't have some of those, I don't know, evolutions baked right into the bylaws. And so you'll notice that as a little bit of a theme, that in some cases we've kicked some things to policy because it's much easier to change a policy, to amend a policy, because the board has to come together. The board is not, the giant pool of members. It's a smaller group, and therefore it's a little bit more nimble. It's able to act a little bit more reactively as some of these things happen. So I just wanted to set the stage that corporate registry tells us sometimes to change things. We should change them. They will not accept them if we do not change them. I know that firsthand because I had some bounce where between the time that they don't ever like make these things obvious, they don't like send out a notice, you just submit them and they're like, oh no, by the way, we changed the law, we just didn't tell anybody and this is no longer acceptable. And it creates some chaos. So we know that they're not going to accept some of those things. We also know sort of from, again, best practices in history, that where there are items, where there are concepts in bylaws that may shift and may continue to evolve, if there's an alternate way to approach it or think about it, for example, by putting it into policy, it's a better approach to do that. We don't want, of course, put everything in policy, and we haven't suggested that. But that's a little bit of why it looks, if you look at the comparison, it looks messy. It looks like we've done like major surgery on the bylaws, in part because we're trying to modernize a little bit. We're trying to comply with what we know the laws are, and we're trying to make the bylaws a little bit more resilient or a little bit more robust, so that if there are changes in the future, we're not back to the drawing board every 6 months having to try to call together a meeting that can be tricky to do. So I thought I would give that background and context, because I don't think that's intuitively obvious unless you deal with corporate registry, the lovely people that they are, on a near daily basis. So let me pause there and see if that has raised any questions, and then if not, we can go into some of the more particular questions or higher level concepts. Okay. Did anybody have any specific or general questions, or just context questions? Again, I realize that bylaws are not super sexy and fun, but I will do my best to kind of explain what some of the rationale were for some of the changes. If Sierra.
Do you want me to go now? I have a list.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will preference with this list does not come from just me. It comes from our FCSS board as well. And
Okay.
I do actually have our chair is in this meeting. So Jane, if there's anything additional that you want to add or any other questions, just feel free to pop in while we go through these, okay? All right, so turning to page 3, so this is 113. Should the end of that sentence, Article 2.7, not read 2.72?
So there were, and I'm not sure that we're looking at the same page 3. I'm looking at a black line, not a clean copy, so my page number might be off. But when I look at
I'm looking
section,
at the red line copy that we got.
when did you get it? Recently
Oh
or a long
God,
time ago?
no, like a hot
Okay.
second ago. So this is in definitions.
Yeah.
So this is
One,
bylaws definitions. Yeah.
yeah, 1.1.13.
Uh, yeah, well, it's 1.1.3.
Oh, 1.1.3.
And it starts appeal committee has the
Yeah.
meaning set out.
In 2.7.2.
Yeah, it should not say, it should say two, in the copy I have, it says 2.7. And
Yeah. It's not incorrect. We could be a little bit more precise. Like 2.7 is the big heading, and then 2.7.1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5 fall under that. So it's
okay.
not
So it's just referencing the
incorrect.
big heading, not the specific
Totally.
one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me just put that in my notes. Okay,
Oops.
so now I'm on page 7. This is 4.3.3.
Yep.
And we're wondering if we can get a definition of individual representative.
Yeah. And in the scroll to a different place. So what we did when we received that question, and I think you might just not have the most up-to-date version that we're working from, is we did incorporate that and include a new definition of individual representative. And I can read it's a sentence. What we've proposed it, and I can circulate this, or we can make it available after the call so that you have it in writing. Individual representative means with respect to a member that is not an individual, so in other words, an organization, an individual authorized by that member to be nominated for president in accordance with Article 4.3.3.
Okay, sounds good. Um, so
It's a little bit,
now,
it's a little bit circular,
okay,
but it's not terrible because we're referencing this section, and then in that section we're referencing the other section, so it's a little bit circular. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world.
okay, sounds good. Um, so then moving to 4.3.9
Yeah.
and 4.310.
Yeah.
So I have in my notes here that the statements seem to be contradictory. In 4.3.9, it says that a direct cannot submit on number of terms. Then in 4.3.10, they put limits on the amount of years that can be served.
So the intention there, and we've clarified that a little bit, is what we've said in 4.3.9 is there shall be no limit on the number of non-consecutive terms in which a director may serve. However, in 4.3.10, what it's saying is you get this term and then consecutively you get another. Well, what I think the intention there is if you take a break, so let's say you were a director for 8 years, you had a 4-year break where you weren't a
Mhm.
director, you can come back on the board and restart that consecutive cycle. But the point of this is, from a governance best practice perspective, you shouldn't have directors who the same directors have been on the board for like 100 years. The whole point is you should have the requirement to filter in some new blood, some new perspectives. And so I don't think those were entirely inconsistent, but we've clarified that there's no limit to the number of non-consecutive terms, but consecutively it's 8 years. And then take a break. You can come back in I guess at least 1 year. You could come back again and start another,
Another eight
sequence,
years. Yeah.
but you shouldn't be there for 30 years consecutively.
Okay, sounds good. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Those were easy.
Yeah, I know. Hey.
Did I see another hand a minute ago? I might have invented that. Melissa, were there any other questions that had come in to you? I know you were sort of or Kayla, you were sort of the repository of people were sort of funneling in their questions. I think we've addressed in the sort of latest turns, we tried to address them, but did any last minute ones come in to either of you?
No, I haven't
Okay.
received any for a bit. And I should apologize. We didn't send out the latest versions to people because we just thought we'd wait till maybe there was closer to the end and then
Yeah.
we'll send out the versions again.
What I will say, just while people are thinking if they have any other questions, is um, as Melissa said, or as Kayla said, we made some changes and then we got some questions and we were like, oh, that raises another question. It's like pulling a little thread, right? You're like, oh, okay, so we made that little change and now that has identified that we should probably make this little change and sort of on and on. And that is the process of bylaws, unfortunately. And so when it goes out, this is I'm sort of thinking out loud, but when it goes out, and so I know that various versions have gone out and you've seen the black line or the red line back to kind of the first version and then maybe to the second version. What I think is important is when it goes out for the purpose of saying, okay, members, this is what we're going to ask you to approve, what we're going to ask you to vote on at the AGM, notwithstanding the fact that there have been these little incremental changes along the way, it will be helpful for people to see the cumulative changes. So when we compare the current bylaws in existence today with what we are proposing the bylaws to be after they hopefully get approved at the AGM, to see the whole package, what that does is it looks a bit messy because there have been, again, like we took out section one, right? So we start off with this big, hey, like let's just remove this, which then has the effect of like altering all of the numbering after all. So there's all these like consequential changes that make it look a little bit messier, if you will, than it really is. Like it's not anything really drastic. I would say that the type of changes that we have proposed are because corporate registry requires it, because we wanted to introduce a few definitions that were used and maybe were a little bit loose throughout the bylaws. So we've added some clarity. We've added some clarity around some of the process things like the non-consecutive terms, all of those things. And so I think you just need to preface that to the members that like this kind of looks like a hot mess when you look at the cumulative thing, but it's okay. Like we're just yeah, we're just doing that. Does anybody else have a burning bylaw question that's keeping you up at night? Melissa, Kayla, what do you uh propose? I think this was the last session. I might have another one on my calendar, but I think this is the last kind of webinar type session that we had planned. What do you propose kind of as next steps? Like obviously, Melissa, you referenced the fact that the cumulative documents with the changes can be circulated. Is the next step for the little package with the frequently asked questions and the clean bylaws and the cumulative changes to go out to the members and see if if they have questions in advance of the November meeting? What do you think the next steps are process wise?
Yeah, we could do that, but then we also have to put together the special resolution
Yeah.
to send out to the membership. So that will have to go out in October, I think we send that out.
Yeah, 21 days minimum, better practice to have about a month.
Yeah, so kind of by the end of October, we'll send that out. Uh, but yeah, I think, Kayla, do you think the board needs to review this anymore or?
I think that it'll probably go to the board one more time just because there were those little changes that, like ones that came up during spring regionals, for example. So I think that it would be prudent to have the board look at them one more time. I don't anticipate any changes. I mean, we've beaten this to death.
Yeah.
But just to do our due diligence, we'll send it to the board maybe. And then it can go out to the membership once the board has given that direction, I think.
Okay.
Then we had discussed potentially having a pre-conference
Oh,
session,
yeah.
maybe.
Session. Right.
But
Right.
I don't know if I haven't been involved in a lot of the conference planning, so that might be a discussion as to what that looks like, kind of offline.
Yeah, we had definitely discussed having a like Wednesday morning kind of session. If it makes sense, like if there's still questions, I'm not sure. I keep
Yeah,
saying our
perhaps
goal is to get to the AGM. These pass, no problem, we're done. But yeah,
that would be ideal. It would make, I would suggest our lives much easier if we got that out of the way in advance of the AGM for sure.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll leave it to sort of the planning. It's definitely doable to have a, I don't know, Q&A session. I don't really know what to kind of call it, related to bylaws. It will be virtually impossible. Like if there's a typo, for sure we can make that change, but it's going to be virtually impossible to be like, let's add in this entire concept the day before, or let's pull out this entire concept. Again, we can do a little bit of wordsmithing. We can do a little bit of, like, again, if there was a typo, but anything beyond that, it's going to be virtually impossible to do that the day before the proposed, um, or the day before the vote happens. And the reason for that, again, is that if there was a substantive change, so anything more than a correction or a typo, um, it's got to go out to everybody with 21 days notice, and the day before will not quite qualify as 21 days in advance.
that makes sense.
Yes.
So the only other thing I offer is, do you do a final, like, speak now or forever hold your peace session in September? So
Yeah,
that if somebody does say, hey, like this concept is missing or this or that, there's at least time to fix it, to react to it before you hit that 21-day cutoff. Because if you don't, if we play it out November, day before AGM, someone's like, please remove this, please add this. Now we're stuck for the following year.
Okay. Maybe we can come up with a creative way to reel people in and get them to come to one final session.
Or it goes to the individual boards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something maybe to get some feedback. I know we have had a lot of feedback, like we have had some good questions and we've made some tweaks, and like things do get raised. It's just the day before, if we're raising questions, we're kind of hooped.
Yeah.
Tracy.
Tracy's got her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
So just as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking like I wonder if local FCSSs are struggling how to present it to their boards, right? So could there be like a short slide show or something that we could take to our boards to, because I look through the documents, I'm like, it's a lot of stuff, like where do I start? Like it's a little overwhelming. So maybe that's why we're not getting the uptake for people to come to see or to listen in on these. So it might be helpful to either the board chairs or the local directors to be able to say, here's a little mini presentation, 15 minutes that you can take to your boards. And hopefully that some people will take us up on that. Just a thought.
Maybe it's shifting the that chart that we have with the changes just into like a quick little slide deck or something. Maybe that would be something that would be a good tool for directors. I know for mine, I just like Rhonda put it on our agenda and I make like there is a benefit and a curse of having the president on your board because I'm obnoxious and I make them read everything. But there was definitely engagement. So I think that making a point of highlighting the changes and the importance of knowing these, because I mean, at the end of the day, some people are community members that aren't familiar with bylaw changes on these boards. So that's not a bad idea.
And I think that what we tried to do, and I realized like so there's so many ways I can dummy up really heavy legalese documents, but we tried to create kind of the FAQ document to say like, why are we doing this? What was this before? What is this after? And maybe that's the place for the board to start, like to get its head wrapped around conceptually, what are we trying to do? Because we tried to make that as kind of simple as we could.
So maybe it's a goal. So when is it that that typically, and I'm looking to the directors on the call, you typically choose your voting delegates for the AGM when?
We usually do ours in September, but I don't know if there's consistency for others. Oh, I see
Okay.
Debbie saying September at the conference. Yeah, it's kind of random.
Okay, so maybe it would be great if we had a one final thing in September, similar to this, or a cutoff time to send your correspondence in, or something like that. And prior to that, we could send out like that FAQ document or a slide deck or something for directors, and then suggest choose your voting delegates once you've discussed this or something, like just to tie it to something that already have to happen in process. I believe in using a captured audience already. If you're doing something already, this goes with it. So Melissa's like, great, more work for me. This is great.
No, I think it's all in the FAQ document that
Okay.
Dentons put together. I haven't looked at that document lately, but I don't think there's anything that needs to change in it.
Okay.
No, it's pretty high level. It doesn't need to change unless somebody is like, please remove this or please add in a whole new, concept. I think it's still pretty current. I was taking a quick look at it this morning and I was like, yeah, all still true, which is great.
Yeah. Oh, Kim is saying most of her members cannot do a session during the day. Okay. That was something I was sort of mindful of as well, because I think we did a lunchtime one and this is the second one. Perhaps maybe if we're going to do one more session, maybe it will be possible to accommodate. You're right. There's lots of board members that probably have day jobs that might not be able to make it to a daytime session. It's a really good point. Maybe we'll be mindful of that. Thanks, Kim.
Is it okay to speak up quickly?
Of course it is.
I talk faster than I type. That high level preamble that you gave us before you took questions, I found very helpful, even if it was something pre-recorded just like that with highlights. That was meaningful for me. Maybe not for others who know more about legalese, etc., and corporate registries, but I found that interesting. I could just speak for our own advisory. We've read it, other than the spelling changes. The questions today were certainly thoughtful. I think it would have been interesting to hear what the questions were from the first session, and how they've been addressed. The high level, this is why we did what we did, we recognize it looks like we did major surgery, all of the things, this is why. That's the most helpful. Those are the most helpful things. Just my opinion, but I think if people haven't taken the time to read by now and ask thoughtful questions, then yeah, I fully support that sentiment that, you know, speak up or hold your peace kind of thing, because like, how long do you give people, right? Yeah, I think we've all read by now.
That's a good point, Kim. And we did record the first session, and this one is recording, although you probably heard that I missed the beginning of Heather's um, opener, but definitely we can share the video recordings out.
That might be actually really helpful, Melissa, is if you just give the links, like send a note and give the links. Some people do learn better by listening to it, and sometimes if you have the document and you're, you know, listening, it can make some sense. That's a great suggestion, Kim.
For the directors on the call that weren't involved with the association board dialogue, when you review the new draft bylaws, was there anything that stood out to you aside from what was already addressed, that made you go, like why? And you're wondering the rationale, or was it all fairly self-explanatory when you look at it? Don't all talk to me at once. I'm going to go with it was very self-explanatory if no one is jumping up and down and having questions. Case Sandra is nodding. Perfect. Excellent. That gives me hope. I am, November, hopefully you guys will give me an easy job again to chair the AGM. Good. Do you have enough from us, Heather? Like you didn't need feedback or anything from us on this one. It was just to answer questions.
Yeah, no, I think that is correct.
Awesome. Great.
Excellent. Well, I guess if there's no other questions, we'll wrap this one up. And was there something?
Yeah, Kim was just saying the explanation on sections having become policy was helpful to answer what she was mostly wondering about. Yeah, and I think that's a good explanation. I think that if I were someone in your shoes, I would also wonder the same thing, like why is this disappearing from the bylaws?
Human nature is very much like, oh my God, there's a change. That can't be good. We should object, right? Like that's generally what we think of. And so then when you look at a document that's like, oh, hey, we have some red and blue and green on every page, you're like, oh my God, like this is overwhelming, therefore it's bad. And I think we just have to get past that and understand the rationale for why we're making the changes. We're trying to make everyone's life easier. We're trying to comply with the best practices, with what corporate registry requires. And we're trying to keep it maneuverable so that we don't have to have big changes in the future and overwhelm people again in the future with other changes that could just be in policy and are easier to keep current as little things happen.
Excellent. Well, if there's no other questions, then thank you, Heather.
Of course.
And have a great afternoon, everyone.
Nice to see everyone.
Well,
Okay, bye-bye.